company analysis for Finance 381. The companies I decided to do my analysis on was Sanderson Farms, which is a company that specializes in the growing and selling of chicken. Netflix, which is a TV internet website where you can watch TV shows and movies anywhere and anytime if you're a member. And Yum Brands, which is a fast food operator for Taco Bell, KFC, and Pizza Hut. The analysis will help me answer a few questions like would I make a short-term loan to the company, would I make a long-term loan to the company, and would I purchase equity from the company. So we're going to start with Sanderson Farms, and we're going to look at the quick ratio, current ratio, and the cash ratio to determine if we're going to make a short-term loan. So the quick ratio increases from 0.93 to 1.92 over the years. The quick ratio is the abilities to meet short-term obligations with the most liquid assets of the company. The current ratio is the company's abilities to pay short-term obligations. The current ratio for Sanderson Farms increases from 2.93 to 3.46 over the years. The cash ratio for Sanderson Farms is how much cash we have to cover liabilities of the company, and the cash ratio slightly increases from 0.21 to 1.12. So looking at these ratios, we can determine that we would make a short-term loan for Sanderson Farms because the ratios are higher in comparison to the other two companies. To determine if we're going to make a long-term loan to the company, we look at the leverage ratio, which is how our assets are being financed. If they are higher, it means they're being financed by debt. If it's lower, it means they're being financed by equity. So Sanderson Farms' leverage ratio goes from 1.75 to 1.30. So their leverage ratio decreases, which means they're being financed more by debt. This means that we would not make a long-term loan to Sanderson Farms because of the decreasing leverage ratio. Next, we're going to look at the return on equity and the price-earnings ratio. The return on equity is good for Sanderson Farms, but the price-earnings ratio is declining by a significant amount from 19.28 to 7.78, which means we would not purchase equity from this company. The next company we're going to look at is Netflix, and the same ratios, quick ratio, current ratio, and cash ratio. Quick ratio increases from 0.45 to 0.6, which is a low quick ratio. Current ratio increases 1.34 to 1.48, and cash ratio increases from 0.45 to 0.60. So since the ratios are lower in comparison to the other two companies, we would not make a short-term loan to Netflix. Next, we're going to look at the leverage ratio. It goes from 5.07 to 3.91. It decreases. It's also very high, so that means they're being financed more by debt than equity, so we would not make a long-term loan to Netflix. The return on equity is good from 2.47 to 16.72, and the price-earnings ratio decreases from 100.55 to 91.34. This means we would not want to make we would not want to purchase equity from Netflix because of the declining price-earnings ratio. The next company we're going to look at is Yum Brands. Yum Brands' quick ratio decreases from 0.49 to 0.37. Current ratio is 0.87 to 0.68, and the cash ratio decreases from 0.35 to 0.34. Since the ratios are lower than the other two companies, we would not make a short-term loan to Yum Brands. However, the leverage ratio increases from 4.49 to 4.10. It decreases and then increases to 4.59 and that leverage ratio is very high numbers, so we would not make a long-term loan to Young Brands because they're being financed more by debt than equity because of that high number. The return on equity decreases from 80.31 to 56.61, so that's not a very good return on equity. And the price-earnings ratio increases from 18.22 to 31.34, so it's increasing, and that means we would want to purchase equity from Young Brands because their price earnings are higher and increasing. So in conclusion, we said that we would not make a short-term loan to Netflix or Young Brands, but we would make a short-term loan to Sanderson Farms. For the long-term loan, we would not make it for Sanderson Farms or Netflix, but we would make it to Young Brands. And for the purchasing equity, we would definitely purchase it from Young Brands, but we would not purchase it from Netflix or Sanderson Farms.